just the cans, and we'll take the cans and throw them on the side and help them carry them up.
So this is the first time you've done a potluck like this?
Yes, it is. So this is a gathering. We've met obviously with folks here, our conservation community, our sportsmen, our shooters and fishermen, and folks who have a deep concern for that heritage in Minnesota, plus the economic activity. And we decided to kind of kick off, use our New Arm hot dish as the centerpiece here, but do a potluck, gather at the river. My son already caught a little fish out of the river, and make the case that that this resource, this treasure that runs through us and those across Minnesota are worth making it happen, making it work for the future. So that's what we're doing.
And we have, here in Minnesota, we have a lot of places to conserve. We have a lot of, water and that. And why do you think it's so important that people came out?
Well, first of all, these are the folks that have made it happen. I think many of us here, especially New Ulm, Mankato, and along the river here, this river we know had some work to be done on it, and these are the folks that did it through public-private partnership with the DNR, plus nonprofit, non-governmental organizations. We've got everyone here from Trout's Unlimited to the river folks, and it's important that they get here for us to make the case that this is not just about that heritage, which is critically important. It's not about just the recreational activity. This is a $3.5 billion a year industry in Minnesota. Fishermen and hunters, sport shootermen, and boaters add that much to the economy. So this is a case of, that's the equivalent of the Mayo Clinic. And it's a major employer, it's a major economic engine, and we need to gather with the experts, public, private, to how we make that continue into the future and capitalize on this. This is not just an important part of our heritage, it's a moneymaker flowing by us, and we need to capitalize on that.
And so if we don't, it'll be a huge impact on us, right?
Yes, if we don't, we lose those opportunities. I think we fall into the false choices. Let's be very clear, agriculture is an incredibly important part of our heritage, and we are incredibly proud to be one of the largest agricultural districts in the country. But this idea that there's somehow a separation between people who care for the land and people who grow things on the land is false. And it's that same idea that when we're talking about policies in agriculture, you need to also be simultaneously talking about policies in conservation, not just because it's a nice thing to have. This is about making sure this business thrives, and so it's really important that these conversations are happening. This is probably one of the greatest collection of folks who understand this in the upper Midwest, that understand things from invasive species. You see Asian carp and how we deal with that. Folks that understand how do you get the public-private partnerships to fund some of this rehabilitation. We were discussing the upcoming pheasant opener with the governor is going to be in Medelia right down the road this year, and I said last year I was out in Worthington, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't saying, oh, I remember how it used to be when I was a kid. Now we're saying, this is like it used to be. There's roosters, there's pheasants we can shoot. That's all positive.
So what do you think is the most important conservation issues that are going to be coming up for the remainder of this session? And then maybe even to next year.
Well, I think it's us trying to grapple with, and it's the market's working the way it's supposed to. As land prices and the ability to grow on land, it becomes very difficult for us to fund things like CRP. The rent on that, you just can't do that. So I think it's finding creative ways to make sure we're doing good stewardship while still allowing that right of landowners to be able to make a living for their family. And I think the challenge we have is we're going to have to think innovatively, that there's not just going to be federal dollars to set aside land, that we can have working lands and smarter ways to invest. And I think that's why these partnerships and these folks here are coming up with ways to do that. So I think inside the challenge of a lot of CRP acres coming up that we're not going to be able to renew is an opportunity to figure out new ways to make sure that we keep these resources there. And as I said again, we have to prioritize in government, but I think it's really critical for us not to see the river and outdoor activities as a nice-to-have thing after we pay the main bills. I would argue this is part of the mortgage. It's part of the big picture that has to be done first, and I'm certainly listening to these folks about new ways you fund that, new ways you go about it, that don't just involve a federal dollar to take land out of production. That's not good enough.
And then how much are you concerned that the ongoing debate over the Farm Bill is going to impact conservation items going
Absolutely,
forward?
hugely. When you oversimplify that argument, it's not a debate about food stamps. It's a debate about policy in this country of how we craft that. My fear is that we're not dealing with the smart reforms like crop insurance, getting rid of direct payments, nor are we doing the reforms that are necessary on the nutrition side of things. But what the people forget is there's a huge bulk of the Farm Bill that involves these conservation programs, rural development, and as I say again, this is not just a diversion on the weekend of something nice. This is $3.5 billion, and I've got a study here and that we asked to have done. I'm one of the vice chairs of the Congressional Sportsman Caucus. We commissioned a study, economic study to be done about the impact of sporting activities on each of our states individually, and I'm very concerned that at a time we're starting to see growth, we're starting to see new businesses, we're starting to see some of that. If we bog down in this absolutely unnecessary debate, what's not being talked about are these programs, and so that's one of the reasons obviously today we're highlighting that piece of this, and the Farm Bill needs to be done, needs to be brought forward, needs to be finished, and understand that if it's not, these are not like crop insurance or food stamps. These are not mandatory funded programs, and you're going to start to see some impacts.
Are you planning anything, any other potlucks or other conservation projects?
We will, and we're going to get down in the southeast where we've got some trout streams. There we've used some EQIP dollars to bring some of those trout streams back. We're going to use the surrounding the governor's pheasant opener for some of the initiatives we're putting forward. And it's important for us to expose young people to the sporting activities and the heritage. Again, as I said, not just because it's part of who we are, an important part of how we like to use our recreation time. It's money. It's a big economic driver, and so we're going to continue on with this, trying to make the case, trying to get away from that oversimplification, the Farm Bill, or somehow environmental policies are in conflict with production, agriculture, other things. That's not the case, and I think it's important when you gather a group of experts who understand that, building our communities, making them stronger, understanding that whether it's county parks or a river that's producing fish, those are positive things for a community, positive quality of life issues.